repeat it.
Right. Now, Emel, Linda's on the line, and you have to push that little round button. Put her on hold, and you can go ahead and use the phone regularly.
I can see right now. It's okay.
All right. So, talking about the Old Testament was for the Jew. The New Testament is for the world, Jew and Gentile. And in Ephesians 2, 14 to 16, Christ destroys, kills the Old Testament, abolishes it, so that he can make Jew and Gentile one man, being new man, a Christian. And then it just tells you the same thing in Colossians. So if we looked at Colossians 2, 14 and 15, it's going to tell us what Paul said here in Ephesians. It's going to repeat itself that Christ destroyed the Old Testament. And that's written so that we have more than one witness, regarding the Old Testament being destroyed. Now, the hard understanding when you're reading a Bible is that since God's will changed, people think, well, maybe I can follow this will of God. It's a commandment. It says God told them that it's a commandment. Maybe I can follow this. And they don't realize, because we have a new will in the blood of Christ, a New Testament, that going back here will curse you. It won't bless you. It will curse you as a Christian, because this is not the will of God for today. It used to be the will of God for Israel. So we've got to remember that that was a Jewish Bible for the Jewish people. And then Matthew is a Christian Bible for Christian people. But when the Christian goes back to the Jewish Bible, it's not a blessing, it's a curse that they're bringing upon themselves. So we're going to read that in Galatians chapter 3. We'll go to the book of Galatians chapter 3 in verse number 10. So here in the book of Galatians, now Paul wrote to this church of Galatia. By the way, most of these churches were in Turkey. They call Asia Minor, but it's Turkey, what we today call Turkey. Most of these churches. Now, when you read Acts and you read Paul went to Athens, well, that's Greece. And then some of the things around there is actually Greece. And some of the churches that Paul built up, he built up there in Greece. But a lot of his ministry is down here in Turkey. Now, Galatia, in Galatians 3:10. This particular verse is so important. When I stumbled across this many years ago, it's one that I wanted to memorize. And I even found out that this was taken from Deuteronomy 27:26. And the only reason I found out, I think I read back through Genesis, reading the whole Bible again. And then here you come across that in Deuteronomy. So it says here in Galatians chapter 3, verse 10, for as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. So it says if you do a work of the law of Moses, you're going to be cursed. And then it tells you what the curse is. It's not witchcraft. It's not sorcery. It's not that kind of a curse. It tells you and explains the curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law, to do them. Now that little phrase, book of the law, means the Mosaic law, the Old Testament. That's what the little phrase, book of the law, means. So if we notice what it says, the curse binds you as a Christian that if you start obeying one of these Old Testament laws, you have to obey them all. You're not allowed to obey one unless you're going to practice all of them. Now, Christians don't realize the curse they're putting themselves under today because nobody can do these laws back here in Moses. Can't do them today. It's not possible. You know that not even your tithing can be practiced today? You can't. Because all the tithes is supposed to go to the temple. They don't have a temple. So the tithe is supposed to go back to Jerusalem, not for Canada or United States or anywhere else in the world. And according to the Old Testament, the tithe can only be taken from Jewish people, not Gentile people. And the tithe can never be money. It has to be fruits, animals, and vegetables. That's the tithe of the Old Testament law. And by the way, according to the Old Testament law, you have to eat your tithe before you give it. You have to eat it. So, how many sermons have you ever heard where a pastor said to you, now let's eat our tithe?
Never.
They're not going to tell you that. But when you read your Bible keeps repeating itself in the Old Testament. You must eat your tithe before you give it to the Levitical priest. And he's got to take it to Jerusalem. You can't take it anywhere, to any country or any synagogue. No, it's got to go to Jerusalem. And that doesn't happen today. So, as well as animal sacrifices must be in Jerusalem in the temple, and they can't animal sacrifice today. That's not going on either. So if you obey, you think about it, just one law back here, and it curses you to do all of them, and nobody can. So why do one? Right? Why get involved and try to practice even one? Because it's not going to bless you as a Christian. It's going to hinder you, hurt you. So this is the big differences between the Old Testament, the New Testament. Now, metaphorically, let's look at this word metaphors. A metaphor is not a shadow in typology, right? So if we're going to talk about the Old Testament, you can't use shadows and typologies to talk about the Old Testament because a human being is the shadow or the type. Only a human being can be a shadow and a typology. And you can't use a human being to talk about the Old Testament. So all you're left with is metaphors. Now, a metaphor can be anything other than a human being. So if you say the grass or the clouds or the sun or a tree or a flower, an animal, a donkey, a horse, anything can be a metaphor. A dove, whatever, everything and anything, as long as it's not a human being, it's a metaphor. Now, why is it important as a Christian that we need to worry about that or think about that? Because as you're reading a Bible, Jesus talks about it. He talks about metaphors. And really what he's talking about is the Old Testament or the New Testament. But without using the word Old Testament, New Testament, he uses a metaphor. And so we want to understand what are these metaphors that talk about the Old Testament, New Testament. So let's go back and we'll see how Jesus, back in Mark, this is where we begin our little journey here. Mark chapter 14, verse 24. Actually, let's read verse number, should we include verse 22 and 23 with it? Someone want to read verse 22, 23, and 24?
That's Mark.
Mark chapter 14.
Okay. Mark 14:22, it says, "And as they did eat, Jesus took bread and blessed and brake it and gave to them and said, 'Take, eat, this is my body.' And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank of it. And he said unto them, 'This is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many.'"
So here we have two metaphors. And the first one is the bread is supposed to be his body. Now, it wasn't his body, but it's a metaphor. And the wine is supposed to be his blood. And it wasn't his blood, but it's a metaphor.
Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Hello. You made it.
Hi.
We're just talking a little bit about the Old Testament, New Testament.
Okay.
We're looking into the scriptures, and we're trying to discuss the Old Testament for the Jewish people and the New Testament for Christianity, and how God's will changed. And we were looking at the differences, just some few little differences here, like from Exodus until Malachi. That was 1,500 years to write 38 books. But from Matthew to Revelation, it wasn't even 100 years. And the New Testament was finished. And so now we're looking at what's called metaphors. We're reading Mark 14, verse 22 to 24. So that's where we are right now, Mark 14. So we're still studying Old Testament, New Testament, but we're looking at it with metaphors. Still the same topic, though. So we're reading Mark 14. So here in Mark 14, the Lord, he said, "This bread is my body," which is a metaphor. "And this blood is my wine," which is a metaphor. The wine is going to represent his blood, although it's not his blood. And the bread represents his body, although it's not his body. So what we're doing now is we're looking at introductory, how God is introducing to us these metaphors to really talk about another subject. So once I've realized Christ calls wine the New Testament, and it's the new wine, that's the New Testament. So if the new wine, he uses the word new. If the new wine, and the word wine means testament, and if I use the word new, then I'm talking about the New Testament. So if I use the word old wine, what am I talking about?
Old Testament.
Old Testament. We're still using the metaphor to talk about the Testament. All right, so now we're going to look at these particular stories, and we're going to look at a saying from Christ. A saying metaphorically about Old Testament, New Testament. So let's look at the first miracle Jesus did, John chapter 2. This is his first miracle in John chapter 2. So you'll notice here in verse 3 and 4, we don't want to think that Mary is being rude to Jesus, or Jesus is being rude to Mary in how he answers her. But here in John chapter 2, we're going to notice in verse number 3 and 4, a conversation between Jesus and his mother. Okay, and let's read that. It's like Jesus is being rude to his mother. He calls his mother woman. What do I have to do with you? It sounds kind of rude, you know? And my hour hasn't yet come. Expression. My hour hasn't come. And it takes you many times, and sometimes years, reading it over and over and over and over before you can even understand, what is this really about? His mother says they don't have wine. So, I mean, they're at a wedding, and the normal way the Jews celebrated a wedding 2,000 years ago was 3 to 7 days of drinking wine. It was one drunken party. 3 to 7 days solid. And you're there eating food and drinking wine and celebrating for 3 solid or 7 solid days. And you'll notice Jesus shows up on the 3rd day of the wedding. So they're already drinking for 3 days now. And so they're drinking wine, and they ran out of wine. So you can imagine how much wine people can drink after 3 days. Drinking wine depends on how many people you have there. Now, the mother was concerned they didn't have any wine. We're not told why. But she comes to Christ and said they don't have wine. What she said was just about wine. It was just about a physical thing. But that interpreted that. He didn't interpret. She said that carnally, naturally, talking about physical wine, but he took that as his blood being shed on Calvary to bring in the New Testament. Now notice his answer. He's not being rude, but he says to her, woman, and he said, it's not my hour. So he's pointing to the fact that he has to die to bring in the New Testament, to get to the new wine. And it's not my hour to die yet. That's the point. So we're using the word metaphor. We're talking about the New Testament or the Old Testament. And so in the first miracle, Jesus, he was already given an insight that he was going to get the Jews off of the old wine and get them into the new wine. He was going to destroy the Old Testament and bring in a new covenant or a New Testament by his blood.
And be spilled, and the bottles shall perish. Wine must be put into new bottles, and both are preserved. No man also having drunk old wine new, for he saith, the old is better.
So we're going to look at the creator of heaven. He's so smart, he can put a brain in an insect. You can't talk about the genius of God. It's beyond comprehension. Word. So he's not saying what you think he's saying here. You read these few little words and you think you got a handle on it. Oh yeah, I know what Christ is talking about. No, you don't. It goes far deeper in thought. Because he's talking metaphorically. And he's not talking literally. And so your mind has to be trained. Talks about the Old Testament, New Testament, but this time he's going to use a garment. So we're already introduced to wine going into old bottle. And he said, if you put brand new wine, young, one is old.
Yes.
That Christ is sitting on both. One is on young, one is old. Metaphors. And they'll tell you some things that you know is because of history. Historically, they'll see, oh, here in Daniel, well, Babylon took over the world. That means the Middle East world. And then after them, Medo-Persia, which means Iran, took over the world. And then after that, Greece took over the world. And this is all in Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel 2. And then another empire arose to took over the world. And so they're thinking, what came after Greece? Rome. And that's how you make an error in trying to interpret a Bible, because now you're not following the Spirit of God. You're following history. And that will lead you down a wrong road. That's where they're all down a wrong road, trying to follow the fourth kingdom as Rome instead of the fourth kingdom as the Antichrist kingdom, what the Bible calls it. And so you can read these prophecies and how that the Lord Jesus Christ here in Daniel chapter 2 is going to be the stone cut out of a mountain that will destroy the whole image. Because the Antichrist kingdom, it takes these previous kingdoms and interwovens it into the Antichrist kingdom. So the Antichrist kingdom will have within it Greece, Medo-Persia, and Babylon. And the theology and the religion will be interwoven into the Antichrist kingdom.
It's going to take Babylon in there too?
Yeah. That's what Daniel's vision will tell you. Because when the stone strikes the image, the whole image is one. Why is the whole image standing as one and not all individual broken apart? And it's the same thing that's taught in Revelation 13. When John saw the beast, it had the feet of a bear, the teeth of the lion. So you're looking at Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece in the dragon kingdom. They're all one. That's what you're looking at in Revelation 13 and here in Daniel 2. So the religion and the philosophy and the ideology will all be there, compounded in the Antichrist kingdom. Now, our time doesn't allow us to go through and read all of Daniel 2 in this dream that a man had that was actually a child of the devil.
Yeah.
He was a servant of the devil, but God knew that he would end up to be a child of God and following God. But when he had the dream, he was serving devils. He was not serving God. And yet the dream is all about the Antichrist kingdom as well.
Long before his time.
Now-
His time. After him.
That's why prophecy, this is the only book in the world where no prophecy has ever failed. You can't point anywhere in the Bible and say, this prophecy that I'm reading didn't happen. You can't do that, not with the Bible. Every prophecy that's here came to pass. We're not talking about 100 prophecies, we're talking thousands of prophecies came to pass and not one failed. Now that can only be said as if the book is written by God and not men. That's the only proof you have. This separates this book from every book in the world, every religious book. Because none of them can stand up and say, we've got prophecy and it proves that God wrote it. They can't say it. Only this book can say it and proclaim it and prove it. It can prove it because not one failed. And this is an example, Daniel 2. These kingdoms that happen, one right after the other, according to how they're written, they happen. So here in Daniel 7, you're going to read all about animals, beasts, metaphors. Now, the beast isn't really the animal you're reading about. It's a man or a kingdom. And so you're reading, they tell you the name of the country. And it tells you that that country will take over the world. And it did before it happened. Now, is that just coincidence? I don't think that you can say who's going to take over the whole world of the Middle East and write it before it happens. Not possible. But this is written. And so it all happened. And you'll see. So you're going to know also, oh, that's the Antichrist. I was expecting him to destroy 3 kings. Because it says the little horn will destroy 3 kings. Ab and Ammon, they're all in Jordan. All of them.
In Jordan?
Yeah. They're not in Israel. They're in Jordan.